Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a nation, a young republic, suddenly seeing its capital erupt in violent protests. The prime minister resigns. Homes of top leaders are actually set ablaze. This isn't some dystopian story. This is Nepal right now. Today we're doing a deep dive, and we've curated this specifically for you. We've gone through a stack of sources, news reports, academic journals, historical analyses. Basically, we've done the legwork to give you a shortcut to being really well informed about the complex factors shaping Nepal's, well, precarious situation.
Nepal is absolutely at a critical inflection point right now. It's facing challenges, from these intense street movements right up to deeply embedded systemic problems. What's really striking, I think, is how all these different layers, internal frustrations, external pressures are converging. It's creating a genuinely volatile environment.
Yeah, and we're going to try and cover all of it. The raw energy of these youth-led Gen Z protests, the surprising return of monarchist feelings, even the often overlooked barriers for women trying to participate in politics, plus the broader security challenges, both internal and external.
Yeah.
So the immediate spark for this recent explosion, this Gen Z uprising back in September, what was the trigger? It seems to have been a government ban on 26 major social media platforms. We're talking Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, X, YouTube suddenly gone. Though interestingly, TikTok wasn't banned. Apparently they'd already complied with government regulations.
Right. And while that social media ban was definitely the spark, this protest, mostly young people, 16 to 25, it clearly represents something much deeper. If you zoom out a bit, it feels like a generational cry against a political system that just seems stagnant, that has failed to deliver for them.
And the scale of it, the impact, it was staggering. Tragic reports of at least 19 deaths, over 300 injured in clashes with security forces. The destruction wasn't random either, was it? It targeted key symbols: Parliament, the Supreme Court, party offices like the Nepali Congress HQ, even private homes of very senior leaders. That signals a profound challenge to the state's authority.
Absolutely. It led to high-profile resignations, too. PM KP Sharma Oli stepped down, citing the quote, extraordinary situation. Several other cabinet ministers followed.
And the chaos resulted in curfews. The main airport in Kathmandu shut down temporarily. Even Army helicopters evacuating ministers.
That's right. It shows a level of crisis. But beneath the surface, beyond just the social media ban, what was really fueling this? Well, our sources point overwhelmingly to rampant corruption and nepotism among the political elite. Specific high-profile allegations against long-serving leaders.
Like the gold scam, the Bhutanese refugee scam.
Exactly, and the Giri Bandhu tea estate scam. The public anger was so intense, the term Nepo babies was apparently trending online. Then you add the severe lack of jobs and economic opportunities. It's forcing mass migration. Over 400,000 people leaving annually. That's over 1,000 a day.
Wow.
It's this strange paradox, isn't it? Remittances from these workers are crucial for the economy, but the exodus itself is like a quiet rebellion, as one source put it.
A quiet rebellion against a system failing its youth. And then there's the frustration with the same old faces in politics.
Absolutely. Leaders like Doba, Oli, Prachanda, they've dominated for decades. And think about it, 13 different governments just since 2008. Constant churn, little progress.
And the international reaction. India issuing a travel advisory, Human Rights Watch condemning the police force.
Oh.
That adds pressure, right?
Definitely another layer of pressure. It complicates things regionally and internationally. And, looking beyond this immediate uprising, it's clear this isn't sudden. Nepal's political instability is chronic. Think about this. 32 government changes since 1990. 32. That tells you something profound about the systemic issues.
Right. And into that instability, we're seeing these counter-revolutionary forces emerge. You mentioned monarchist movements organizing their own rival protests, sometimes turning violent, like back in March 2025. Even the former king, Gyanendra Shah, making provocative statements.
Yes, and what's insightful is how this connects to the perceived failures of the Republican system, established in 2008, and perhaps a weakening on the left. It seems Republicans and leftists might have underestimated the monarchy's lingering appeal. There's also talk of ideological, degeneration within parts of the left. Parties like the CPN-UML becoming hard to distinguish from more traditional bourgeois parties like the Nepali Congress. There are internal divisions, even within major parties, about republicanism itself.
Interesting. So it's fragmented.
Very fragmented. And newer parties like the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the RSP, and figures like Kathmandu's mayor, Balin Shah, they're seizing this moment, challenging the old guard.
And the foreign interference angle.
Right.
Concerns about backing from monarchists.
Yes, disturbingly, some sources suggest concerns about external backing. Reports mention elements within India's ruling regime, the RSS, even UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath allegedly providing support, financial, political, maybe even military, to monarchist groups.
That's a serious allegation. So we've talked about the political elite, the instability.
Yeah.
But what does this mean for the average person in Nepal? How does this filter down? Because beyond the high politics, the country is grappling with deep inequality, right? Unemployment, slow growth, poverty, food insecurity, rising debt.
Absolutely. And all exacerbated by climate crises, natural disasters. It creates this immense public frustration with governance, with corruption, a lack of accountability. It fuels anti-establishment sentiment.
Which brings us back to the Constitution itself. The 2015 Constitution established a federal democratic republic, but its effectiveness seems under real threat now.
It really is. Federalism is criticized, republicanism is questioned, and this political vacuum, this uncertainty, it creates fertile ground for, well, worrying trends like neo-fascism and populism.
Let's shift focus slightly, because beyond the political infighting and systemic issues, there's another crucial dimension: women's participation in politics. And this is where I think it gets really interesting, uncovering struggles that go beyond factions, touching on fundamental rights and representation.
Exactly. Nepal has constitutional mandates, 33% female representation in legislatures, and some parties use feminist rhetoric. But the reality is women face huge systemic barriers. It's not just about the laws on paper. It's about deeply entrenched societal structures that actively hinder their political engagement.
And the research shows this clearly. What are the biggest barriers women report? Social stigma is huge, cited by 75%. Then fear of harassment, 68%. Fear of political violence, 62%. Lack of family support, 54%. These are massive numbers.
They are, and it directly impacts participation. It leads to marginalization in what's still a very male-dominated political scene, limited influence, and real concerns about tokenism.
Just being there to fill a quota, essentially.
That's the fear. And crucially, socioeconomic status makes it even harder. Women in the informal economy reported the highest average fear of political engagement, 78%.
Wow.
Students, too, 72%. Unemployed women, 70%. It shows that security and support systems are often weakest for the most vulnerable. Young women face these double barriers, their gender and their age.
But there's a difference in how parties are perceived. Newer parties seem to fare better.
Yeah, the data suggests newer parties are viewed much more favorably by women. They score higher, around 4.0 to 4.4 on a Likert scale, for things like inclusivity, responsiveness, transparency, supporting leadership roles, compared to traditional parties, which only score between 2.4 and 2.9. That's quite a gap. It is. And putting this in the bigger picture, achieving genuine political equity in Nepal isn't just about formal opportunities. It demands a fundamental cultural shift. It means actively dismantling patriarchal obstacles, making politics a genuinely safe, welcoming, inclusive space for all women, not just a select few. Okay, so beyond the protests and the political infighting we've discussed, Nepal faces this really complex web of security challenges, both internal and external. These aren't separate problems. They're deeply interconnected, constantly putting pressure on the nation's stability.
Right. So internally, what are we looking at? Cultural conflicts seem significant. Tensions between religious groups, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, ethnic conflicts involving different communities like Khas, Metis, Tharas, regional conflicts too, Pahadis versus Metis.
Yes, these fault lines exist. Then the economic and gender inequality we talked about that creates fertile ground for unrest. And food insecurity is critical. 68% of people rely on agriculture, yet Nepal struggles to feed itself. 36% of young children suffer chronic malnutrition. That's a staggering figure.
It really is.
Yeah.
And layered on top of that, natural resource scarcity, climate change impacts droughts, floods, landslides, hitting a vulnerable nation hard, even though it contributes little to global emissions.
Exactly. And underpinning so much of this is corruption, constantly undermining the state's ability to function, its legitimacy, fueling that public anger we saw erupt.
Okay, so those are the internal pressures. What about externally? Nepal's location seems key here.
Absolutely. It's often described using the phrase, a yam between two boulders, stuck between India and China, two nuclear powers, often antagonistic towards each other.
The Lilliputian dilemma.
Precisely. It's this constant high-stakes tightrope walk. Every internal decision is magnified by the strategic interests of these powerful neighbors. Foreign interference is, frankly, common.
And the border with India specifically, long, open.
1,880 kilometers, mostly open. It's a known transit point for smugglers, terrorists, human traffickers, major security concerns for both countries. Plus, lingering border disputes like Kalapani and Susta constantly fuel anti-India sentiment within Nepal.
And relations with China.
Also complex, shaped by geostrategic interests, politics, including concerns Beijing has about Tibetan refugees in Nepal engaging in anti-China activities.
And then the modern threats, cybercrime, pandemics like COVID-19.
Add those into the mix, further straining a state that often lacks the resources and preparedness to deal with them effectively.
But what really strikes me is how interconnected all these threats are. They're not in silos. They can have this butterfly effect, crossing borders, constantly challenging Nepal's unity and sovereignty. It's an incredibly delicate balance. So as we wrap up this deep dive, looking at everything we've discussed, what does it all mean for Nepal's path forward? We've seen the raw frustration of the Gen Z protests, the deep cracks in the political system, the fight for women's inclusion, these persistent security threats. It's a lot for a young republic to handle.
It is, and ultimately, this crisis feels profoundly systemic. Without urgent, fundamental changes from the government, from political parties tackling corruption, delivering real reforms, safeguarding democratic institutions, Nepal is navigating a truly precarious moment. Real change needs more than just policy tweaks. It needs a cultural transformation, a political arena that's genuinely inclusive, reflecting the realities and needs of all its citizens.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to reflect on. Consider how this intricate web in Nepal, political instability, social inequality, geopolitical pressures, mirrors, maybe in unique ways, challenges facing democracies everywhere. What fundamental shifts are really needed, not just in Nepal, but globally, for any nation to achieve stable, inclusive governance in our increasingly complex world?